I work alone in a mall. My therapist said I needed structure. She probably didn't mean a job watching a dead mall die a little more each night. It wasn't a choice, not really. The layoff notice felt less like a piece of paper and more like a tombstone for my old life. Dr. Thorne said I needed a reason to get out of bed. With the pills rattling in my pocket and the rent notice on the door, this was the only reason I could find. Night security at the Old Meridian Grand Galleria. The pay was ridiculous. I got the job without so much as a phone call. That should have been the first red flag. I drove out there at noon on a Tuesday. The Galleria was 20 miles out of the city, a concrete tumor on an otherwise empty landscape of scrubland and silent, watchful trees. The parking lot was a sea of cracked asphalt and sun-bleached lines, utterly devoid of cars. It was a mausoleum. The man waiting for me by the main entrance was named Abelard. He looked like he'd been carved from driftwood and left in a cellar for a century. His skin was tight over his skull, and his eyes were wet and black, like freshly dug earth. He wasn't just tired, he looked worn down to the soul, his shoulders permanently stooped, as if from a great, invisible weight. In one hand, he held a folded uniform. In the other, a heavy leather belt with an empty holster. His voice sounded like gravel being stirred with a bone. "You, Milo?" His gaze wasn't just looking at me. It felt like it was excavating, searching for cracks. "You Abelard?" He gave a single, sharp nod and turned. I finally took in the building itself. It was a fever dream of architecture. A Gothic cathedral had been smashed into a Roman bathhouse, with a massive Persian dome of stained, sun-faded glass plopped on top like a sad, forgotten party hat. It wasn't built, it was stitched together from a dozen different corpses. Abelard fumbled with a ring of keys, his knuckles swollen and arthritic. The lock on the main glass doors groaned in protest. It was noon. A mall shouldn't be locked at noon. "Any other guards?" I asked, just to break the oppressive silence. He glanced back, his face a mask. "No, why not?" He pushed the door open, the hinges screaming. The air that washed over me was cold and stale, thick with the smell of dust and forgotten perfume. Only needs one. I followed him into the cavernous, silent interior. Our footsteps echoed like gunshots. He led me to the security office on the second floor, a small windowless box. Inside was a mini fridge humming a mournful tune, a coffee maker, a cracked leather sofa, and a desk crowded with monitors, all of them dark. Taped to the wall was a yellowed, laminated floor plan of the mall. Certain areas and hallways were circled in red ink with single words scrawled next to them. Hums, stares, breathes. Abelard threw the uniform at my chest. "Change, and don't touch the monitors. I'll be back." He left, and the silence he left behind was heavier than his presence. I swept the room for cameras, my fingers probing air vents, my paranoia a familiar, almost comforting hum. The uniform was stiff, smelling of industrial cleaner and something else, something faintly metallic. There was no radio, no pepper spray. But as I slipped it on, my fingers brushed against something hard sewn into the lining of the chest pocket. It was a small stone, perfectly smooth and unnaturally cold, like it had just been pulled from a frozen river. I set my wallet, phone, and a small plastic baggie of my antidepressants on the desk. It's the little rebellions that keep you going, right? Taking your meds from a baggie that looks like it should hold something far more illegal. It was one of the few sparks the depression hadn't managed to snuff out. I was dry swallowing a pill when Abelard returned, another, much heavier keyring in his hand. His eyes flicked to the baggie, then to my face. His expression wasn't one of suspicion, but a kind of weary recognition. "Prescription," I said. He grunted and tossed me the new set of keys. They were heavy, old brass, each with a small tag. B4, B5, B6, all the way to B9. Then others, maintenance, sprinklers, vents. And one more, a single key on its own small ring, its tag a stark, blood-red plastic with yellow letters, REC. "Those keys open the 5 main maintenance hubs," he said, his voice flat. "Each hub controls a sector. power, water, ventilation. The systems are isolated. One part of this place goes dark, or gets compromised. The rest can hold the line. The red key is for the lock at the very end of the 9th sublevel. You only use that if you're about to die. It's not a door. It's a last resort. He stared at me. Do you understand? He took me on a tour. We walked past dark storefronts filled with faceless mannequins. We crossed 3 food courts where the only sound was the buzz of dying fluorescent lights. As we passed a defunct toy store, Carousel Fantasia, a faint, tinny music box melody started to drift from inside. Pop Goes the Weasel. The tune began to speed up, distorting, the notes bending and souring until it sounded like a dying scream. It was cut short by a splintering crack and a high, wet shriek that vibrated in my teeth. I froze. Abelard didn't. He walked calmly to the dark entrance of the toy store and stepped inside. A moment later, he walked back out. The music was gone. There was a tiny wood splinter on his sleeve and a smear of what looked like white frosting on his cuff. He didn't say a word. In one of the maintenance hubs, a concrete room that smelled of ozone, he showed me the breaker panels. Things will try to get your attention, he said, tapping a pressure gauge. You'll want to see some of them, so you keep the lights on. But there are others, things that hunger for notice. For them, you cut the power. In the light, they're shy. In the dark, they get bold. If the breakers trip and you're caught in the black, you make yourself small. You make yourself small. You make yourself nothing. Because the things you don't want to see can't hurt you if they can't find you. But the things you do want to see, they can. And they will. The way he said it, with no hint of madness or humor, chilled me more than the cold air of the mall. On our way back toward the entrance, a new sound started. A slow, rhythmic drip. Scrape, drip, scrape, echoing from the long service corridor ahead of us. A smell hit me then, old copper and damp cellar rot. Before I could even process it, Abelard grabbed my shoulder and slammed me back against the wall, his wiry frame surprisingly strong. He hit a light switch next to us, plunging the corridor into absolute suffocating darkness. What the... He don't look? He hissed, his voice a blade in my ear. Don't even breathe at it. I held my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. The dripping, scraping sound grew louder, closer. I felt a pocket of intense cold move past us, a draft that felt greasy and wrong. It didn't feel like a person. It felt like a void. The scraping was the sound of wet canvas being dragged over broken glass. It passed us, and I felt a pressure in my mind, a feeling of being scrutinized by something ancient and blind. The sound faded down the hall. After a full minute of silence that felt like an hour, Abelard flicked the lights back on. The sudden glare was blinding. The concrete floor was clean. There was nothing there. He looked at me, his dark eyes unreadable. You understand the dark now? I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Back at the main entrance, he told me my first shift was Thursday. 7 p.m. to 4 a.m., $50 an hour. If you make it through the first night, you'll see a lot more shifts, he said, and for the first time, he smiled. It was a terrifying sight, all yellowed teeth and no warmth. It was the smile of a man passing on a curse. As I was turning to leave, he called out, "Milo." I turned back. His face was grim again, all traces of the smile gone. "There's a welcome gift for you under the desk in the office. From the last guy. It's taped up there for a reason. Find it before your shift starts." I got in my car, the engine sounding impossibly loud in the dead quiet of the parking lot. As I drove away, the mall's monstrous silhouette shrinking in my rearview mirror, I thought about my therapist. Dr. Thorne wanted me to confront my demons. I have a feeling I just signed up to confront a whole building's worth.